Hello there, kia ora. Have you heard the phrase, we had librarians being compared to fishery officers from an MP lately when talking about the pay equity changes? It's become the go-to argument for the coalition. The Prime Minister used it in response to the protests last week. Nicola Willis mentioned it in her op-ed in the Post in response to being called the C-word by Andrea Vance in an opinion piece that she wrote. Active used it in social media updates. National even had Chris Bishop come along and mansplain the changes on TikTok.
Librarians with fisheries officers, for example.
It's a simple, catchy line, and that's what the coalition are hoping people will see and swallow. And some do, like these people who are spouting similar lines, or going for Misogynist of the Year awards, or just plain stupid. But like a lot of issues that governments and political parties try to boil down to catchy phrases, it's way more complicated than a single phrase can really show. And with everything else the government can be blamed for right now, from the mass ongoing exodus from the country to the inanity of DEI cuts in the public service, to a measles outbreak, their voters seem to be cheering on because science and evidence are hard, or even failing to meet their target on new cops. Well, they're going to be hoping that people let this issue slide away and a catchy catchphrase will stop people asking actual questions when they point out the most tenuous of arguments to make their point. For example, on the surface, it does seem strange to be comparing librarians with fisheries officers, and for the government to vilify librarians and make them seem like greedy assholes, since librarians and librarian assistants were part of the 33 groups whose claims were cancelled because of this bill, because they are two very different roles. But the issue isn't what the actual job entails or even the exact qualifications needed. The old Act required detailed research into roles across sectors that had comparable levels of skill and training, not the exact same skills and training. The applicants had to show that male-dominated roles that had similar levels of skill and training were paid more than female-dominated roles. And for librarians, that also included comparisons with property surveyors, teacher aides, customs officers, corrections officers, parking compliance officers, and administration staff. All different roles, all with comparable skill and training levels to some degree. This allowed those bringing the cases to go, look, we do this role, and over here does something very similar. Oh, and we do that role, and something over there also does something very similar. It was never a straight argument of librarians should be paid the same as fishery officers, and the comparison being pushed by the coalition on the topic is disingenuous because they knew this. They voted for it in 2020 when the law was passed. But as you can imagine, when you're looking at lots of comparisons over the minutiae of what a variety of roles entails, this takes time. And when you also have to ensure that you met other criteria in the Act, like the percentage of dominance of women in the workforce and the time women have been dominant in that workforce, that was never going to be a fast process because those going through this process needed to ensure the integrity of the data being presented. And we all saw last week how rushing complicated issues ends up looking like a bad idea and kind of dodgy. But not to worry. The government insists what they have done is simply simplify the process because they believe in equal pay. I mean, remember, they went all out on social media last week to tell us that, and they even believe in equitable pay, as long as it's under the criteria of the new law. Under the new law, claimants will only be able to compare roles in a same or similar field, and there's an issue with that. A lot of low-paid, female-dominated roles in this process are only comparable to other low-paid, female-dominated roles. Nurses, midwives, teachers, plunket admin, librarians. What are the male-dominated roles to which you can compare these two? Which is why the legislation was set up the way it was in the first place, to find the value women in these workforces were being undervalued by. So now there's a higher bar for claimants to work towards again, and a system set up that makes it harder to find how much people in these roles are being undervalued on a case-by-case basis. Because we know as a whole, this number is around $17 billion because that's what's been reallocated in the budget. So that's a pretty good starting point for guessing how much people in those roles are actually being undervalued right now. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.